I'm the best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been. There's no one can stop me.
Welcome back, fight fans, to another installment of Corner to Corner Boxing. This is Louis, joined once again by Carlos.
What's up, dude?
Dude, I don't even have to tell you how many questions I got around where you've been the last couple of weeks. So why don't you fill us in on what project you've been working on, dude?
Yeah, man. Thank you for asking. I've been working. So as you know, when we started this project, it was just us talking about boxing primarily. And you know, I'm a big MMA fan as well, and I like really anything with violence, bro. You know, Muay Thai, wrestling, kickboxing.
Yeah.
So this really ignited my ambition to really just start focusing and covering other sports. So we growing the Corner to Corner brand and doing Corner to Corner Combat, where I'm planning to cover other combat sports as well.
Right.
So that's pretty much it, man. It's it takes a lot of time, as you know, to build this kind of stuff and lay down the infrastructure. But the good news is that moving forward, there's going to be more diversified content in regards to combat.
Yeah, and all under the Corner to Corner brand. So, you know, I'm happy that you did that because we're expanding our brand. We've made some great progress on the box, on the boxing channel, and now you're going to expand into these other sports. So, can't wait to see it. I can't wait to have the chance to collaborate with you on your podcast, and I'd love to have you as a guest, whenever you have time to, on this podcast.
For sure.
But let's jump right in, dude. And there's one word that I can think to describe this last week.
Okay.
Fuck.
Fuck. Okay.
Oh, fuck, dude. Like, let me back up a little bit because it hasn't just been this week, right? It's just been this fucking year, bro. Like, if just a quick recap of the things we've seen so far. We saw a wonderful fight between Lomachenko and Haney, where Haney, edged it out against an aging all-time great. Lomachenko turned back the clock. And then we had Lopez versus Taylor, where I think, if I recall correctly, we both picked Taylor in that fight, and we were both pretty convinced on what was going to happen. And so did a lot of other people, boxing pundits included. And just Lopez came out and had a career-defining performance. Jump forward to Inoue Fulton, which happened this last Tuesday. Same deal, dude. It was supposed to be an even match. Inoue was moving up to super bantam. There was a lot of questions of, will his power carry up? Is he, biting off more than he can chew by moving up to his fourth division? And he just smoked Fulton.
He did.
And then this Saturday, dude, like Spence versus Crawford, a fight that's been marinating for half a decade. Yeah. And it's, it was, I don't care who you were picking in this fight. Nobody was predicting what happened.
Not like that. No.
Right. Unless you were like just, like a shill for either fighter and you were, borderline trolling.
Yeah.
Nobody thought that.
Yeah. The serious analysts were predicting a back and forth affair.
Yeah. Everybody agreed that it was going to be a banger.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to be a closer fight than it ended up being. Dude, like, we've had 3 undisputed fights so far this year, and in a couple of months we're gonna have a 4th.
Yeah,
it has just been such a crazy year. I remember it might have been last year, maybe even in the beginning of the year, you and I had a private conversation about how we were saddened by the state of boxing and by what the future of boxing looked like. And look at us now, dude.
Yeah.
It's so crazy, dude. This has been like if Hold My Beer, if that meme was a real life event, it would be 2023 in boxing, because one guy comes out and shows out and we got another guy right after him saying, "All right, you thought that was impressive. Hold my beer and watch this."
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I've heard you use the analogy before that boxing is like a toxic ex-girlfriend that you just kind of always go back to for whatever reason, even though they treat you like shit. But really, if we look at that analogy, I think this is more like that dream girl, right? I think every guy has that dream girl that gets away. Not me, because I'm married to my dream girl, right? But every guy has that girl that like, hey, what if, she was the perfect one and she got away or whatever. And it's like that girl comes back to your life, does everything great, forgives you for whatever happened, and just like has this amazing relationship with you. And you're kind of like pinching yourself like, hey, is this really happening? Is boxing in 2023 real? Like, we're not used to this as boxing fans. I was watching the fight, not to get too ahead of myself here, with Terence Crawford and Spence. I was watching that fight, and along that same night was a UFC fight, right?
Yeah.
There were some UFC fans there. I'm a UFC fan as well. But the UFC fans are kind of used to getting big fights, right?
Right, yeah.
For us, all the boxing guys were like, hey, what's up? It was like a family reunion, dude. We're seeing people that I haven't seen in many years just because we couldn't believe it. We're like, is this really happening? And it was. And I'm happy that a lot of people that I had not connected with in a long time were excited about this fight.
This year is one of those years where you and I are going to talk about it, and a lot of other people are going to talk about 20, 30, 40 years from now when we look back at the quote-unquote golden age of boxing, right? This is what we're seeing and we're witnessing. We're living through it now.
It's a great year, for sure.
Yeah, dude, but let's jump in, right? This is the Fight Hangover. It's a special episode because we had two high-level anticipated fights in the same week.
Yeah.
Inoue versus Fulton, dude. What were your impressions of that fight?
Master class by Inoue. I didn't expect it to go down that easily.
Right.
I did pick Inoue in the fight, and when we did our last pound for pound list, I had him at the very top of the list because I feel at that time the other people that I had beneath them didn't have that either consistency or that career-defining moment, right? So he had put in a lot of work, and he had just been annihilating opposition, world-class opposition, all champions.
You said he hadn't had a career-defining moment today?
The people below him.
Okay.
That's why I had him at number one.
Gotcha.
That's why I had Inoue at number one. I did think that Fulton was going to be a more stern test. And the reason why I thought that is, A, Fulton is bigger. He's big for the weight class.
Yeah.
And he's a very good boxer. And I have not seen Inoue deal with that style. I thought that style could present a problem to Inoue, particularly because he was at a disadvantage from a physical standpoint. Inoue didn't give a fuck. He went in there and he said, look, I see your size. I see how big you are, how aggressive you look. But guess what? Here's my right hand. Here's my flawless technique. Here is my relentless pressure that is based on solid technique.
Yeah.
And I'm going to fuck you up. And that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, dude. I also picked Inoue. I picked him by decision. And a big part was because I didn't know if his power was going to carry up. And he answered that question pretty quickly in the fight.
Yeah, he did.
I also, I thought, I wouldn't call this a 50-50 fight, but it was like a 55-45
Yeah, it was
fight. It was a very close fight. And although, one of the biggest criticism that Fulton gets is, the guy has like a 38% knockout ratio, which is one of the lowest among current champions. He has 8 knockouts.
Yeah.
So that doesn't necessarily scream power. Mm-hmm. But we've seen him in his fights. He's been in dog fights against Brandon Figueroa.
Yeah.
And, he might not have that knockout power, but he certainly has pop.
Yeah.
And, for Inoue just to run through him like a fucking freight train, it's crazy to call a 122 pounder a freight train, right? But that's exactly what happened.
He is, yeah. He's perfect nickname. He's a monster.
Yeah,
that's what he is, and he's already calling out for the undisputed battle. And he's looking ahead at 126. That can be a great division for him. So there's a lot to be excited. If you're a fan from Japan, if you're a fan that lives in Japan, anywhere in Asia, you have a great champion in your hands. And Inoue is just a picture-perfect, flawless technique with brutal power.
Yeah. It looks like he's going to unify the second division. He strikes me as the type of cat that's going to hang around 122.
Well, he's got one more fight to be undisputed at 22.
Yeah, which against Tapales, right?
Yeah.
You saw the post-fight when he came out of the ring. That, and again, I will preface this comment with what I always say. I do not believe that any fighter is scared of another fighter.
Yeah.
Like, these guys are in the fight business. That's what they do for a living. That's how they put food on the table. These guys are not scared of each other. But that call out was as unenthusiastic as I've ever seen. Because he just saw the number one guy in the division run through like a fucking, like, he basically got thrown in the meat grinder, right? And he's coming in and saying, "Oh, I want that next."
Yeah.
I don't think that's very easy to do. So where do you put Inoue? We won't jump into the pound for pound list just yet, but where do you put him all time in the bantamweight division or those lower divisions?
Well, look, I think it's still a little bit too early to go and say all time. Me, my style. I'm just enjoying the moment, man.
Okay.
Like, I'm just enjoying what Inoue is doing. I love the fact that right now in boxing, you said it best, 2023 is on fire. But we are looking at guys from 122 all the way to the heavyweights. And there's excitement in every single division. And I think if I rank it in terms of who's the most exciting champion right now, who is someone that I'm looking forward to watching in the future, not just short-term future, but in the future of boxing, is close to the top of the list.
Dude.
Because not only is he like a future talent in terms of he's so young, he's going through divisions, but he's already established. There's other guys, for example, Shakur Stevenson, Tank Davis. I'm really excited. Boots. I'm really excited to see those guys, but this guy is already like ahead of them in terms of accomplishment.
Definitely. Let me back up and give you some context on why I asked that question. I was on the boxing subreddit today, and I was just looking through the comments, and I saw somebody compare him to Ricardo Finito Lopez.
Okay. Well, that's a much lower weight, though. Finito Lopez, he was minimum weight, like 108 pounds, dude.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought he was a bantamweight.
No, he's not a bantamweight.
Okay, so I guess we're lumping all those lower divisions together when we're making that comparison. But, again,
I've seen, like, I don't mean to interrupt, but the reason why I don't like to get into these discussions is because I've seen people already compare him to Manny Pacquiao, right? And it's like
it's not that. That's not that.
They're comparing, and some people are making. Look, we can have debates. I'm not against debates.
Yeah.
But Manny Pacquiao went through a lot of divisions. He didn't become undisputed. He didn't seek as many unifications. He just kind of went through divisions, going after big star, big star, big star. But for me, it's all about quality of opposition, right? Yeah. And there's a difference. There's a difference of fighting Marco Antonio Barrera, Juan Manuel Marquez, Eric Morales, and then like those. There's a difference. I understand that Inoue reminds people of the folklore of Pacquiao, where you have this guy who is just a whirlwind of talent and power, and he's going through division and division, but just take a chill pill, right?
No. Yeah, I agree with you. He's not on that level, and that's not a because
knock, because
nobody's on Pacquiao's level.
He could legitimately be the best of all time.
He not only was a champ in 8 divisions, but he ran through those divisions. He started at 112 as a starving 17-year-old kid, and ended up he was at
154. Where did he win up Margarito?
He beat the shit out of Margarito.
Yeah, destroyed his eye socket.
Yeah.
I mean, just changed the guy's life forever.
Yeah, so Manny Pacquiao is not somebody that you want to compare anybody to because it's just.
And that's my point where I don't really like to get into all of these arguments, right. And I know that wasn't the intention of the question, but as a boxing fan, I think we sometimes make the mistake of just like trying to compare everyone to everyone. It's like, look, Inoue is great. Let's just celebrate Inoue. Let's support him, and let's not necessarily stack rank him with the history books because he's writing his own history.
Well, not even with the history books. Have you seen did you see the trending next opponent for Inoue?
Tank Davis?
Get it fucking real. Like that is.
Are we jumping to next opponents already?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, but obviously Tank is not a next opponent.
No.
He's a 135er. You know, like let's be real. Inoue is not going to fight Tank. If they do,
look, they might be crazy enough to do it. Money talks, but is that the right match? No, absolutely not.
No, Tank is going to win.
Yeah, Tank is much bigger,
right,
and carries devastating power. Tank has more power than Inoue pound for pound.
That's along the lines of do you remember when Stephen A. Smith said, "I want to see Lomachenko versus who was it? Anthony Joshua."
I don't know if he ever said that, but that would have been ludicrous if he said that.
Dude, we talked about it. Yeah, he was like, "I want to see him against that guy because that's the best guy in the world." Or versus Canelo, I think.
Okay, maybe I don't know what he said, but that's a big jump.
Yeah, so it's that preposterous to put those two guys in a conversation because we know this is nothing new.
Yeah.
Weight classes exist for a reason.
Yeah.
We've seen it in the history of boxing why they exist because if one guy is bigger, there's not that much talent that's going to get you out of when you're oversized. Right?
There's a cap. There's the cap to everything.
100%.
Your superior skills, your superior talent, your power that is abnormal in terms of it being able to be carried from weight class to weight class, that helps. But at some point, biology, physiology, reality kind of just takes over.
So if you were Inoue's manager or his matchmaker, what would you do in his next 3 fights? You don't have to give me specific opponents, but what's your roadmap for him?
Look, this is what I would do if I was Inoue. There's a lot of talking. You actually, I think, mentioned the name that I thought of, and I haven't seen many people bring this up. But if I was Inoue's manager, I would pivot and position myself to a fight with Lomachenko. And here's why. Lomachenko is too small for 135. But just like Inoue, he's been fighting above his weight class just because it got boring for him at his actual natural weight, which I think is maybe 126, 130. Right. I think he can still make 126. He's an all-time great at 126. He won gold medals. He became a champion at 126 and essentially just got bored. Lomachenko showed us in his last fight with your favorite fighter, Devin Haney, that he is still elite and he still has a lot to offer. Lomachenko wants to be undisputed. That's his dream. It didn't happen for him at 135. But I think if I was Inoue's manager, I would say, look, we are the stars of 126. Inoue, he's not even in that weight class already, but he can be the star of 126. He's going to bring in the views. So can Lomachenko. I would figure out who's going to go after which title. Inoue goes after a few titles, gets some really good, exciting matches, some great people at 126, maybe Venado Lopez or something. Go out, fight those guys, have Lomachenko come in, fight one of those guys as well, and then build up to a big undisputed at 126 between Lomachenko and Inoue, provided that both of those guys get past the stern tests that are at 126. That would be my dream. I think Top Rank can do it. They're both top-ranked talents.
Yeah.
And I think you could easily have Bob Arum convince Eddie Hearn or whoever these title holders are with and say, look, we're going to give you big money fights and we're both going to give and take here, right? Like your guys could potentially lose their titles, but at the end of the day, they're going to get their biggest paydays. We're going to do some huge numbers. And then what's in it for Top Rank is that you could potentially have Inoue, the future star for them, right, in the lower weight classes, go out against who was previously their star in the lower weight classes, was Lomachenko. I think it would be a great, fascinating fight. That's what I would do.
Yeah. So we said 3 fights, right? So one fight at 22 to
122 undisputed.
Maybe one fight at 26. I don't know if you want to call it a tune-up because it'll probably have to be a title fight.
Yeah, it won't be a tune-up.
And then the third fight against Lomachenko.
That's what I would do.
I mean, shit, dude. That's a great roadmap. I don't know. Do you think Lomachenko can make 126 at this point?
Dude, he's small, man. His frame is
he's 35.
He's 35. I don't know. Like, can he make 126? I'm not sure. I think Lomachenko has always said, like, look, I'm fighting above my weight class.
Right.
Is it 130? Is it 126? But at this point, if Inoue is already contemplating Tank Davis, like, why not be a little realistic?
Well, I don't know that they're contemplating.
Well,
I think those are people that are throwing out that name.
They're talking about it. You know, look, Inoue is the type of guy. He strikes me as a dude that I guarantee you he's not afraid of Tank Davis. I know that's ridiculous to say because both you and I know that there's a difference in size and that wouldn't fare well for him. But it does strike me as a guy that we could potentially eventually see him at 130. I think that would be the furthest level or weight that we can see him.
Yeah.
And if you can set up a super match between Lomachenko and Inoue, whether it's at 126 or 130, and you throw in undisputed, dude, come on.
Well,
I'm going to be up for it.
100%. You heard it here first on Corner to Corner Boxing. Lomachenko versus Inoue for undisputed at 126.
Why not?
Fuck it, dude. Run it. Yeah, that's a great match, dude. I didn't consider that because I'm not as creative as you, probably. Yeah, let's just be honest. What about Fulton? Where do you think he goes from here?
I think Fulton moves up to 126.
He has to.
He has to move up to 126. There's that rematch there with Brandon Figueroa, who's at 126 now. There's some good champions at 126. And previously, we had done an episode in terms of which weight classes were more exciting. I was kind of doing a little bit of 3D chess, right, in terms of how things were going to unfold. And I thought that Inoue and Fulton would both end up at 126. I see there's good matchups there. We have some British champions. We have some Mexican champions. We're throwing in a pound-for-pound guy in Inoue. That's a very exciting weight class. So I'm excited about 126 in the future. The good thing about Inoue is that he's not, to use Canelo's expression, he's not with mamadas. He's not fucking around.
Yeah.
He's going in there to beat you up and make history. And as a boxing fan, what else can you ask for?
Yeah, he lives up to his nickname.
Yeah.
He's a fucking monster, dude.
He is.
Moving on. Spence Crawford.
You're right.
Fuck, right? That's the best way to describe not only this fight, but just this week so far, right? I was at the fight live.
That's what's up, dude.
And dude, the atmosphere was so crazy.
Yeah.
It was, there were some points where it felt a little tense because there was, those fans, the fans that came out for Bud and the fans that came out for Spence, they were riding or dying.
It was like Biggie and Tupac.
Dude, it was, but thankfully there was nothing crazy that went on other than, some verbal sparring, but dude, it was just there was such a vibe there, dude.
Yeah.
And when Bud came out with Eminem,
fuck, dude,
there was a roar, dude. It was like, obviously you've been been at big fights, dude. Like you feel it physically.
There's nothing like it.
It's crazy.
There's nothing like it.
And I had turned away for a second. So I wasn't watching when he was walking out, but they announced him, right? And then I just hear everybody around like, damn, like, is this really like that much of a Bud Crawford crowd? And then I see, Eminem.
Did you know that Eminem was in the works?
I saw that Twitter exchange. Didn't. I mean, dude, it's Eminem. Like, to get him to come out,
he rarely makes appearances.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, dude. He's tough to get out in public, dude, and it just shows like how big of a fight this was, man.
Incredible.
It was such a great build-up. I talked about this on the last episode. From a welterweight perspective, this was probably the biggest fight since Trinidad de la Hoya.
Yes.
But closer to Kearns Leonard.
That's the fight that most people were comparing that to.
Yeah.
And before we get into the fight, let me talk a little bit about this walkout, because this walkout, I mean, look, it's just a boxing walkout, right? But it's not just a boxing walkout.
Yeah.
You and I are both from LA. We're both Laker fans. We're used to going to the crypto arena and seeing all those great jerseys just retired, right? This song by Eminem, it's almost like cliche to come out to it.
It's a fucking anthem, dude. Yeah.
Yes, but it's such an anthem that it's almost cliche to come out to, like, lose yourself, like in the moment, it's almost like cheesy in a way. It's like coming out to like Dream On, or there's all these like anthems that people really get jazzed about, but walking out to it every time, it almost seems like, oh, come on, lose yourself, seriously, like. But when Eminem walks out with you, that like fucking changes the whole thing. He's like, dude, this is our fucking walkout. And I feel like from now on, no one should ever walk out to Lose Yourself by Eminem ever. Like that, just like the fucking jerseys that are retired at the crypto arena, this walkout should be exclusively Buds forever and Eminem, and just retire. This fucking walkout should just retire. This guy came out with a fishnet, bro. Like, which every time you associate fishnets and boxing, like that's not a good thing, right? Yeah. People have tried that before. Yeah. I think you got the joke.
Yeah, the real ones know.
This guy made a fucking fishnet look fucking cool, bro. Like, I was like,
he made it look scary.
He made it look like, what the fuck? This guy's really coming out here to catch the big fish,
bro.
He owned that shit.
As and everybody that listened to the last episode knows, my prediction was for Spence to win this fight. And I've been a big Spence fan. I've been following him for the last 8 years, probably. Yeah. And I was confident in my prediction. I really thought that his fundamentals and his size were going to be enough to overcome Crawford. Although I realized that this was a true 50-50 fight, at least when I made the prediction. But dude, when I saw Eminem walking out, I was like, fuck.
It's over, dog.
I didn't bet, and I'm glad I didn't. Because one, the odds were shit, right? It's so close to the fight. Yeah. The only bet that made sense was like the draw or something, which, I'm glad I didn't bet at all. But dude, it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And I was like, damn, dude, this is a big moment.
Yeah, it is a big moment.
That's when it really sunk in, like, where I was at. Obviously, it was in Vegas. I was a bit inebriated, like feeling the vibe, talking to people. But dude, when that walkout set the tone.
Oh yeah, it did.
It was crazy, dude. What did you think of the fight?
Well, look, this. I picked Crawford,
right.
But looking into it, doing the research for the analysis that you do as a boxing match, and hearing you talk about Spence, you're almost convincing me, like, fuck, is Spence too big? Is Spence too fundamentally sound? Is Spence too defensively responsible? Because sometimes Crawford can get a little careless, right? So it was a 50-50 fight. I thought that Spence was going to do better in the early rounds. And then I thought that Crawford would just do something magical and win towards the later rounds. And the fight that most people really compared this to, the parallel fight, was Leonard Hearns. And that's what I thought would happen. I thought that there would be momentum shifts. I thought that it would be just a war of attrition. I thought that Spence would get the better part of a lot of the rounds and the early rounds. And then I think late, Crawford would just dig deep, find that dog and just land something off a counter, maybe Spence lunging in or something, and an uppercut or something just that only Crawford can do. That's how I thought the fight would unfold. But I thought it would be very, very close. I was surprised. I don't remember the last time that a world-class champion, a pound-for-pound guy, was so thoroughly dominated in a fight. I can't think of something. The closest thing I can think of was, well, there's two. When Tyson Fury beat up Wilder in the second fight.
Yeah.
But that was more like, it was some big punches that were landed.
They're heavyweight. It's a
little bit hard. The one that does come to mind, if you remember this, Jeff Lacey versus Joe Calzaghe, where Jeff Lacey, and I'm not saying that Jeff Lacey is up to Errol Spence's level, but there was a similar sentiment where it's like, hey, Jeff Lacey can be a true test, and we don't know who's going to win. And Calzaghe just beat the shit out of him. That was a bad ass whooping, and that's what this was.
No, the fight that this reminds me of is Mayweather Corrales.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one too.
You know, like if you remember that, like when that
yes, that's a better example.
Dude. And it was, you know, it had a, you know, not a similar type build because this was a big event, right? But it was expected to be a tough fight,
50-50,
right? And it was a one-sided ass whooping.
Yeah, Corrales was bigger. He bigger puncher.
To be fair, most of Mayweather's fights went that way against top-level opposition, right? But that was, like, when I see that fight...
He knocked him down 5 times.
Yeah, dude. And I thought you know, one of the biggest things, and I talked about this in the breakdown, the key was going to be the jab.
Yeah.
For both fighters. But especially for especially for Spence. And, you know, when I broke down the path to victory for each fighter, I brought up a point about Crawford doing his best, right, to neutralize Spence's jab and get his jab in the fight. And, you know, that's easier said than done. But he did it so early, dude, that by the third round, Spence wasn't jabbing like he normally does.
Really, after that first knockdown, it was like the beginning of the end. Like he did come out, Spence, in the second round and tried, and he attacked the body, and I think he was on his way of winning the second round. I gave him round 1. Yeah. I was about to give him round 2, and then he just got caught. What's really amazing is that, look, there's going to be a lot of people giving excuses for Spence. And I applaud Spence because he recently posted and said, look, I was raised basically to not make excuses. Even if I had one, I wouldn't bring one up. So that's the way that you handle this. But there's going to be a lot of people saying that wasn't Spence. That didn't look like Spence. He was trained. All these things. If you look at the fight, look at the first 2 rounds before the knockdown, Spence was doing good work.
Yeah.
He was doing good work. It just so happens that he got caught, and I don't want to say caught as in any way, shape, or form luck, because if you really look at those rounds, Crawford set up those traps. He was going to the body. He was going to the body and set up that counter beautifully.
You know what that first knockdown reminded me of? No. It reminded me of a Pacquiao knockdown. He was great at just setting you up,
like German, like when
he knocked him down with a fucking jab.
What was it, a jab? Because it was
well in the Crawford's ambidextrous, so it's it was a lead hand. You'll call it a jab, but it was it might have had a little turn on it, but that knockdown, it wasn't a hard knockdown. It was more of a flash knockdown. Spence was off balance.
By the way that Spence tried to get up, dude, I think there was that definitely hurt him, dude. When he got up, his legs were a little shaky, and he was never the same after that round.
Yeah, and I think something before that might have caught him, because he caught him with his left. Yeah, and then he put him down with the right. So yeah, maybe something landed, threw off his equilibrium, because he looked a little shaky after that.
He did.
But the knockdown itself wasn't like a power knockdown. Like,
no.
It was a flash knockdown. He was off balance. If you rewatch it,
it was a solid shot. I wouldn't call it a flash knockdown by the definition of my definition of flash knockdown. But what I would say is that is a knockdown that happened because of the transition that was happening within that exchange. Like it wasn't like a fluid punch that landed and he fell. It was more like there was an awkward, movement placing, but that shot itself was very solid.
Yeah,
very solid.
That the way that fight transpired after that knockdown reminded me of like Reese versus Joshua.
Yes,
where he caught him with a shot on the ear, and after that he was just on shaky legs. His equilibrium was off. That's the vibe that I got.
That second knockdown was nasty.
That right uppercut,
nasty,
dude.
I didn't really see it with the angle. Like the angle of the TV wasn't the best, but when they went back to the replay, the way it landed, way he turned,
and he set him up for that, right? And that's what Spence wanted. He wanted to get Crawford against the ropes, and he wanted to rough him up, which most people would agree that Spence is a great infighter and wanted the fight to be inside. He wanted to use his size, wanted to use his body punching ability.
And he did do that a little bit.
And he did, but dude, after that first, like yourself, I gave Spence the first round. It's the only round I gave Spence. There was moments between rounds 3 and 6 where it looked like Spence was changing the tide, and then bang, he caught him with something in between shots and completely just fucking stopped any momentum or any potential momentum.
I don't know. I agree with you in the sense that from 3 to 6, Spence was trying and he still believed that he was going to do it. I never felt that the tide changed after the second fight, after the second round. I thought that Crawford was thoroughly in control. But where I would agree with you is that if there was a glimmer of hope, even some level of confidence in Spence's eyes, right? It was from 3 to 6. After 7, that was all gone. No, after 7, it was a formality.
Yeah, I to clarify, in none of those rounds did I think that the momentum shifted, but it looked like it was just about to tip over, and bang, he caught him with something in between shots. Yeah. And those are the worst shots, right? Because those are the ones you don't see coming. And then after 7, dude, I wish they would have stopped it after that third knockdown.
Yeah, there's a good argument that they should have stopped that.
They should have, because that, he was done, dude. Like it just, and the thing about Spence is he's a dog. Bro.
He is. He's not going to go out like that.
He got up from each one of those knockdowns and he pushed forward. Yeah. Right. He never stopped fighting. And even when the referee jumped in and stopped him, he complained. That just shows his heart, right? Yeah. And that's the time where I think the corner and the fighters team needs to protect him from himself.
I think Derek James did ask him, but I mean, if you ask a guy like Errol Spence, you don't ask those guys. Yeah. You just throw in the towel. I don't want to get into.
We're looking at obviously we're looking at this from outside,
right?
And we weren't there in that corner real time. And Spence is a pound for pound talent who, like we've said it over and over, like he's got the heart of a fucking lion, and he's never lost. So you have to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I think that's what happened.
Yeah,
right. But I've seen this fight. Obviously I was there, and I probably watched it 3 times since then.
Yeah.
And it just seems clear to me that after the 7th round, it was done.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, he was washing him after that second knockdown, and it really wasn't. It wasn't competitive. It was like we described Mayweather Corrales. It was more target practice for Terence Crawford after that second knockdown.
Yeah.
So. What do you think Spence does after this?
Well, look, first things first, he's got to take some time off.
He's suspended for 6 months. Yeah. At least in Nevada.
Yeah.
I think he needs at least 6 months to.
He does. Look, I know there's a rematch clause in this fight. And what I think is going to happen and what I think should happen, right?
Right.
So I think what's going to happen is that he's going to activate the rematch clause, and they're going to fight at 154. I think that's what's going to happen. I think that's what Spence is, in a good way. He's a proud fighter, and I think this kind of reminds me of Barrera Pacquiao, like when Barrera lost to Pacquiao the first time and he just got annihilated. And then he came back a few years later, and his thought process was, look, I may not win, but you're not this much better than me. I'm going to compete with you. I'm going to make it to the distance. And that's kind of like the sentiment that I get from this fight, because if the fight were to happen again, right, I don't know if it's going to be that much different even at 154. I think it would be different in the sense that it's going to be more competitive. I think being at 154 is going to help Errol Spence, but I'm not sure if I see the outcome changing. Maybe the way the fight happens. So that's what I think is going to happen. What I think maybe should happen is take some time off, go to 154, and maybe fight. Spence has always said he doesn't believe in tune-ups, right? He's always said that.
Yeah.
He had not fought for a long time and didn't want to tune up before Crawford.
Right.
Maybe something like this can change your outlook, right? Go out, get a tune-up fight, get that confidence back, because eventually, if you do meet Crawford again, you're going to need that confidence. If you go in right now after he just beat the shit out of you, like, it's going to be difficult from a psychological perspective.
Right. I agree. I think he'll feel better, with that extra weight at 54.
Yeah.
I think they both will probably.
Yeah.
Terence Crawford said that,
He had a tough cut.
Yeah. So, but technically I don't see it making much of a difference, the weight change, based on what we saw in this first fight. So I do think that he needs some time off, and he needs to get let's not call it a tune-up fight, but a break-in fight at this new weight at 154. Maybe a guy like Keith Thurman.
Yeah.
Keith Thurman, he's been asking for a fight, but I think, obviously he's been pretty inactive. It's not a true tune-up fight. I mean, it's still Keith Thurman, but I think it's a fight that poses relatively low risk for Errol Spence without having the optics of a tune-up fight, right?
Yeah.
And it'll give him some time, because one of the clear things in this fight was the speed difference.
Oh yeah.
And he's not gonna the timing, but he's not gonna fix that.
Yeah.
He's not gonna just be faster than Terence Crawford.
No,
right?
he's not.
It doesn't work that way. But what he can work on is, there's a lot of slower fighters, like, somebody that comes to mind is Triple G, who's, you'll be hard pressed to find a time that Triple G had the speed advantage, but he still had great success with the jab, because he found a way to change his rhythm, time it and not abandon it.
Yeah.
Because that's the cornerstone of Errol Spence's style. So he needs to work on that, and for God's sake, work on some fucking head movement.
Yeah.
He needs to get off that center line. So I think a guy like Keith Thurman will be a great test, or a great break-in fight at that new weight. And then, again, I don't feel, we got the fight. They're both warriors, and they, not taking away anything from Bud, but I don't feel satisfied with this fight.
What do you mean?
I want to see the fight that we all expected.
I get what you're saying, but I mean,
no, I want to see it again, dude.
Like, you do want to see it.
Yes, this is what I mean.
Okay.
Like, I'm not like, look, again, Bud put on a historic performance, probably one of a top 3 performance that I've seen in my lifetime. He just looked flawless.
He looked unbeatable, dude.
He looked scary. Like, I see people comparing him to Mayweather. This is not that, right? Like, Mayweather, just like Pacquiao, you're not going to compare these two guys. But I've seen questions where prime Mayweather versus prime Crawford at 47, and that's a crazy fight.
It is.
Like, imagine like a Pretty Boy Floyd versus Crawford at 40.
Well, Pretty Boy Floyd
he was
below
at
40, and
well, they what if they fought at 140? Like, that would have been just crazy. Like, let's not get into theoreticals, because we're not going to see that. But my point is that after this performance, it makes me think, like, oh shit.
Look, if there's one word, and we mentioned a few words, right? But another word that comes to mind is vindication.
Yeah.
As you know, you've always been more of a Spence fan, and I've been more of a Crawford fan, just because I felt that Crawford always had that chip in his shoulder, because everyone would always say, you're ducking and you're running, you don't want to fight these guys.
Yeah.
And what I saw from Crawford following his career is like, dude, this guy's not afraid. This guy's confident.
No.
This guy, and I'm not saying that you said that, but a lot of people really doubted him. And I felt that he is a special fighter. And I was really happy that he got the opportunity to prove himself and vindicate himself. He said in the post-fight press conference, look, all of you guys doubted me. A lot of people doubted him. And now it's like, finally, people are seeing what a lot of Crawford fans saw years ago, where this guy, look, he may not have the best resume, but sometimes that's out of your control in boxing. And I'm very, very, very happy for Crawford.
I'm very happy for Crawford too.
Yeah.
I've been a critic of his in the past, notably around his resume.
Yeah.
And part of that is because, it's not his fault. It's just, I don't know if you want to call it mismanagement. The guy's undisputed in 2 divisions.
Yeah.
But his resume going into this fight compared to Errol Spence's was definitely the weaker resume.
Yes, that's true.
But dude, did he prove a lot of people wrong?
He did.
He is that guy.
Yeah.
And I really want to point this out. He is such a great champion.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is the level of respect
that
he showed after the fight to Errol Spence. And you could just tell, he has a lot of love for Errol Spence. That's his contemporary. And those guys seem like they're going to be friends for a long time after boxing is over. And the same thing with Errol Spence, man. This guy lost the fight, but he's definitely not a loser. He's a champion. And what I mean by that is, how many times have we seen, I don't know if this was an upset, right? Because it was a 50-50 fight. It could have gone either way. But the way that this happened was definitely
unexpected.
And, I hate to say it this way, but it was a humiliation for Spence to go out this way in this fight, right? He just didn't perform. And for him to stay for the post-fight interview with Jim Gray, who can be a dick, and he
went to the post-fight press conference
without fucking sunglasses, dude.
Yeah.
He just showed it, and no excuses. And, he just said the better man won.
Yeah.
And it's just refreshing to see, that level of sportsmanship nowadays, right?
Yeah.
Because we've seen it so many times where, a fighter loses and they just, throw tantrums and start making excuses right away. And this is not what happened.
Yeah, to me, this was the perfect balance of respect and intensity.
Yeah.
Because although there was respect among both of the camps, there was swagger, there was intensity, there was back and forth, there was bravado, and that's what you want to see.
But it never
crossed the line.
Yeah.
And there were points where not the fighters themselves, but in the last press conference, the camps were kind of crossing the line a little bit.
Yeah.
And even Crawford basically came up and said, look, you guys are chilling. You guys need to chill from now on, because this stuff could turn real.
Yeah.
It can get out of hand really quick. You already know that I'm coming with it. He's coming with it. You guys, you're not even fighters. So he basically checked everyone. He's just being that uncle at the barbecue where, the little knuckleheads start getting rowdy, and he comes in hey, he kind of just checks everyone.
Shut the fuck up.
So I really like that. I think this was a great, great fight. And look, I don't want to get controversial here, but I think that this is a fight where boxing over-delivered for us. I feel that if anything comes out of this fight, I don't think that this fight is going to do the numbers that it should have done. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I don't know, quite frankly, if this fight is going to make over $1 million pay-per-view buys.
What do you think it did?
I think it does less. If there's an over-under on this, I think it does less. And the way I gauge it is unscientific as you can get. Okay?
Yeah.
But the way I gauge it is this. I have a lot of friends that range from your guys that talk about Sam Langford and Willie Pep and, like Harry Greb is the best middleweight of all time, to the guys that are excited about Nate Paul and, or what is it,
Diaz.
Jake Paul and Nate Diaz fighting, right? So that spectrum. I saw a lot more excitement from my friends about Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia. A lot more. The fans, and it's kind of ironic because the people that were excited about this fight were crazy excited, like super excited.
Yeah.
Like the excitement meter was through the roof.
Yeah.
But they only buy the pay-per-view once, right? It's not like you can measure pay-per-view
They usually
success.
host it.
Yeah, they usually host. They were going to buy it anyway, right? So if I'm gauging it based on the last big fight that did over 1 million pay-per-view buys, which is Tank versus Ryan, I didn't feel the same level of excitement at all from a lot of my friends. The hardcore guys that are going to watch every fight, they were, dude, I'm telling you, it was like a family reunion. All these guys, we came together. I don't think it does over a million pay-per-view buys. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm proven wrong. Or maybe Showtime cooks the numbers or whatever the case may be, because they even said, oh, this is going to do over a million pay-per-view buys. But if they're true about the numbers and it shows less than 1 million pay-per-view buys, I feel this is one of the rare times that fans don't deliver for boxing. In the sense that...
You're right. Like there is top level talent fighting each other. Doesn't always equate to a marketable success, right? Like the fight that always comes to mind is Andre Ward versus Kovalev. They were literally 1-2 when they fought, right? And I think it did under 200,000 buys. So, but I do think that
this is a little different in the sense that
there was more buildup around it.
We've all wanted this fight for years. This is the fight that we've always wanted. It's like you tell your mom or your dad, hey, buy me these Jordans, buy me these Jordans, buy me these Jordans. Yeah. And then you get them and you just go out and play football with them or something, like...
If you had to put a number on it, what do you think it did?
I think it's between 500 and 750. I think it's going to fall there. Yeah, which is not... It's successful.
Yeah.
But I think...
The $1 million is the...
Yeah, I think $1 million is what they wanted. And I don't know if it's going to get there. And look, I'm not saying... I'm not shitting on boxing fans. Obviously, I'm a boxing fan, right? Like... I just feel like
there's not a lot of...
We owed it to the sport to convince as many people as you could to buy this fight. Like, we needed to do that. We legit, had grassroots this shit and just tell people, hey, buy this fucking fight. Knock on doors, on Sunday, hey, have I shared the good news of Errol, Spence and Terence Crawford with you? Buy this fucking fight. Because it's so hard to get these fucking fights done, right?
Yeah.
And if it's not a success, I'm afraid that in the future they can look back at this fight and say, look, guys, why put you guys together when you guys can just independently make a lot of money? Like these fights don't do as well as your...
Well, look, so let's look at I think they both did well, right? For context, Ryan Garcia, Tank Davis sold
1.2, right?
1.2, 1.3, somewhere in that range. I don't know what Tank made, but Ryan Garcia reportedly made about $30 million from that fight. That's so it's 1.2, 1.3 million buys, a bigger market type of fight. These guys walked into this fight with $25 million guaranteed.
And that's what I'm saying. From a business perspective, if you do good business, everyone's got to win. If these guys already split $50 million, what is Showtime going to get? What is PBC going to get? What are the cable providers going to get? So in order for this fight be a resounding success from an economic standpoint, I think $1 million was the benchmark. And I'm not sure, based on my unscientific, anecdotal type of experience, that it's going to hit the $1 million. That's all I'm saying. And that affects things like the rematch. It affects, people aren't going to want to watch the rematch after this performance. And then you come back and you see that it didn't do so well. this can have some ripple effects in terms of the landscape of boxing.
Yeah, I mean, I think this fight was a success, dude. Like, any way you spin it, I mean, the gate was crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like, we all saw the ticket prices up to like $20,000 for tickets. So I think that it did well.
What do you think it did in terms of pay-per-view buys?
I think it did about 750 to $1 million.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if it cracked $1 million.
Okay.
You know, and then we got to look at, you know, there's a lot of people watching. We're just focused on the U.S. market, right? But the U.K. is also a big market for this fight. There was a lot of,
I don't know.
Their pay-per-view prices are a lot lower than what we pay here at $85. I think they're paid like $20 or something like that, maybe less.
Yeah, it's also like at 4 a.m. for them or something.
Yeah, but, you know, people are still buying this fight. This is one of the biggest fights in the last. I mean, what's the biggest fight before this? Probably Canelo Triple G.
Yeah.
You know, so
Mayweather Pacquiao. That's a different.
That's on its own fucking level. Yeah, dude. But so we talked about what potentially Spence does next. What do you think Bud does next?
Dude,
assuming they don't just jump right into a rematch.
Yeah, I think the most likely thing is that they'll do the rematch at 154. I would want to see that fight in the sense that I think Spence would be better at 54, and I think he'll change a few things. I think he'll be more competitive. I do think that. I'm not sure if the outcome changes. But what I'm most excited, and I think Crawford has earned the right to seek out fights that excite him and motivate him.
What this fight did for Bud is it put him in the Canelo level of matchmaking. Not the obviously Canelo has, you know, a bigger marketability factor because he's been the face of boxing for the last, I don't know, 5 years or whatever. But Bud can pick and choose now. Like I think he's earned that right. He's the clear A. Remember, he came into this fight as the B side.
Yeah.
And he's the clear A side. This is the tipping point in his career. Unfortunately, he's 35.
Yeah,
like he's 36 in 2 months. Yeah. He doesn't have a lot of fights left. I think maybe 2 or 3 if we're lucky.
Yeah.
So let's use that rule. What do you think if you're Bud Crawford's matchmaker for the next 3 fights? What do you think?
I don't think you need 3 fights if things happen in an ideal way. I don't know if you saw that call out that he did
with Charlo,
where that was pretty badass. So I think
that's for Undisputed at 54.
Yeah, but if he does Undisputed at 54, I think that's it. I think he's done. I don't think he needs to do anything else. Now, let me give you a few scenarios, okay? Because Charlo versus Crawford depends a lot on what happens between Canelo and Crawford, right?
Charlo.
Yeah, Charlo and Canelo, right?
Yeah.
That's what it depends on, right? You can't get Crawford versus Charlo if Canelo just annihilates him, right? Like the best case scenario would be Charlo has some type of a competitive fight with Canelo, and then maybe Charlo says, hey, you know, I tried, but I have some business at 154, and, you know, our camp, Dallas, you haven't seen the last of us, Crawford. And then they set that up for redemption for Derek James and his homie Errol Spence. I think that can be a huge fight. There's historic implications. The first person to ever be undisputed in 3 weight classes.
Well, he's the first at 2.
He's the first at 2.
The first male at 2.
The first male at 2.
So 3 would be great.
Potentially be at 3, and doing it against a dude in Errol Spence camp, same trainer, you know that's going to get heated. That's what I think would be the best. Now, there's another guy, Jerome Boots Ennis, at 147. They've already had a little bit of history. I think those are the 3 fights. If we're going to go 3 fights, I think you throw the Errol Spence rematch in there. You get Charlo. You maybe could do Ennis. And
at
then
54?
At 47 or 54 for Ennis.
Boots is big at 47.
He's a big.
Yeah.
I think his mandatory for the IBF, and then you close it out with Charlo at Undisputed at 3. Now, that's a lot, dude, because Jaron Ennis looks amazing, right? So
Yeah, but he's also pretty green when you compare him to guys like Spence
and also in Crawford's defense,
but he wants to smoke.
Yeah, he's earned the right to tell guys like Ennis, look, hey, you're great, but who have you beat? Go out there and beat someone like an Ugas, and go out there and beat a former champion. Go out there and maybe Spence. I feel like Crawford. It's almost unfair to put Ennis and Crawford right now, because I genuinely feel that Ennis hasn't earned it, and the guy that's earned it, Crawford, can say, "Look, I want to fight you, but go out there and prove yourself. One more fight." I think that's all that Ennis needs, but it's got to be against the right opponent.
Yeah, so I would pick the same three guys. The only thing I would do is put Ennis last. It seems like you put him second and then Charlo last. I think, if Spence wants it, give him the rematch at 54. I think that fight will still be a success, and it'll give Spence a chance at redemption. Like you, I don't know that the outcome is different. Assuming that he wins that, and assuming that Charlo comes out relatively unscathed against Canelo, run that for undisputed in the third weight class.
Yeah.
And dude, by the way, if he's undisputed in the third weight class, that puts him on the Mount Rushmore of boxing, I think.
I thought about that. I think I may have even said that before.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about it, and it's like,
okay, so it's
maybe in terms of accomplishments,
it's kind of unfair to say Mount Rushmore of boxing, because what was there, like four or five? Yeah, so it's historically there's so many great fighters that we've seen.
Like you're not going to take out Ali, you're not going to take out Ray Robinson,
right? Exactly. So let's keep it to like this division or this range, like light to light middle,
like Mayweather, Pacquiao, and then like you can be in the Mount Rushmore with those guys. And yes, I think that's fair.
So, but dude, I'm excited to see what happens. I'm very curious about more so what Spence does, because this can realistically be a fight that you retire off of.
Yeah, I don't.
But I don't think that's going to happen.
It's possible.
He's already changed his Instagram handle to Shark at 54. Okay, so I don't. He's not going to retire on it. But his next move is going to really determine how his career ends.
Yeah.
Right. Do you think? I think Crawford with this victory cemented his spot in the Hall of Fame list.
He was already in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. What about Spence?
Spence?
Yeah.
I mean, he might.
I
think he's a Hall of Fame guy for sure. Yeah, I think this is. It's even better for Crawford now because he's got a Hall of Fame legitimately. I mean, I read this. I'm not sure if this is accurate. I'm sure someone's going to fact check us, but Errol Spence was the longest reigning second, only behind Trinidad.
I talked about that.
Oh, okay. I heard it from you. Listen, yes.
So somebody fact checked me.
Yeah, okay, good.
No, but he was only off by a few months too. Like, so he was, if he would have won this fight, he would have been the longest reigning welterweight champ. For context, in that it was about 6 years, and 6 months difference. So, but within 6 years, Trinidad he fought 15 times. Yeah. Spence only fought 6. So there is a difference, but in terms of,
but still he's an all-time great.
That's still an accomplishment. I mean, he has a great resume. He was on the pound for pound list for about 6 years. Unified at welter, and great amateur accolades.
Yeah, we can't diminish the career and the accomplishments of Errol Spence, or even him as a fighter, based on this performance.
And I think, a lot of, when it comes to Hall of Fame discussions, you really have to think, I don't want to say outside of the box, but you have to look past the record, because really what that means is that a lot of it has to do with the impact that they had on the sport. Like Arturo Gatti is the perfect example, right? Like he wasn't the best guy.
Yeah, but I think that's a little bit of a.
He had three. Well, no, because you have guys like Tim Bradley, right? Like Sean Porter is a legitimate, contender to be in the Hall of Fame because throughout his career he represented boxing honorably, right? He took the biggest fights. He fought the best guys in their prime, and that's what Spence did, right? He never took a fucking tune-up fight after a car accident, after a detached retina. That's the way that this guy comported himself and ran his career. So I think those things are what set him apart in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he's the Hall of Famer. No objection for me.
Yeah, dude. This has been a great conversation, man. It's.
So before we wrap it up, there was some debate in terms.
Oh, I'm sorry. How did I forget?
Pound for pound, right? Like, so here's my take on it. I did have Inoue as number one in our last pound for pound ranking, and the reason why I did that, I shared with you that the people below him didn't have either consistency or that career defining moment, right? And I did say in that episode that, in terms of the eye test, to me, Crawford is the best fighter in the world. I am glad that he proved it, and he proved it by beating another pound-for-pound talent. Most people have him within their top 5. I've seen him as high as 3, Errol Spence, right? So for me, it's no question. There's no debate. There were only 2 scenarios where I would keep Inoue at the top of the pound-for-pound list. These were the scenarios. If we had like a Lomachenko type Haney decision, whether it's mirrored in controversy, you don't want your pound for pound guy to be mirrored in controversy. Like that would be one scenario where we had that type of scenario. I would say, all right, you're still the number one guy because you won decisively. There's no controversy. Second scenario is we had some type of victory, but in the fashion of Tyson Fury versus Vladimir Klitschko, where it's like, okay, you won, but what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
Right? So those were the 2 scenarios where I would keep Inoue at the top of the list. That didn't happen. I would make the argument, I don't even think it's debatable, Crawford beat Spence in a more decisive fashion and in a more brutal fashion than Inoue beat Fulton. Fulton is in the fringes of the top 10. Spence is in the middle of the top 10, near the top. So there's no question Crawford is number one right now, pound for pound. I know it pains you to say.
No, dude. No. I agree with you. And this is so crazy because pound for pound lists are naturally subjective.
Yeah.
Right? There's very few times where everybody that has valid opinion, right? Because there's
some guy voting in Japan, right?
Yeah, that's just some crazy shit, right? But looking at this objectively and really taking this seriously, it's very rare that there's a unanimous decision on the order of maybe not the whole list, but at least the number one guy. After Tuesday, Inoue was easily the number one pound for pound, and there was a on Twitter, on any social media you saw, like, hey, Spence Crawford are fighting for number 2 now.
Yep. And dude, this is perfect because in the beginning of the episode you said 2023, hold my beer. This was the personification of that mean in box.
Dude, to quote the great Vince Scully, in a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
Yeah, that's a great quote.
Because who the fuck thought that Bud was just going to wash Errol Spence?
No one.
And that's really the only way that he could have taken that spot from Inoue.
Yeah.
Because let's say it was a competitive fight and he stopped Spence late.
There would be a debate.
There would still be a debate.
Right now there's no debate.
There's no debate, dude. Bud Crawford is the clear number one pound for pound guy. He's the best fighter in the world.
Yes.
And Inoue is number 2.
Yes. I agree with you. I 100% agree with you.
Well, Did I forget anything before I wrap us?
No, I think we're good. Very good.
Well, dude, thank you so much for
sure.
joining me on this episode. It's great to have you back, and I look forward to having you back for future episodes. And I look forward to being a guest on your MMA podcast if you'd have me. But as always, this has been another installment of Corner to Corner Boxing. Thank you very much for tuning in. Corner to Corner out.
Later.